what am I? Where are we? This is ABA Generalized, and I'm Anne wrestling my cat right now because he won't leave me alone.
And you're a BCBA.
That too.
I'm Erika, and I'm also a BCBA, and we are still without our lovely third co-host, G. She is still with her little newborn baby. If anyone's seen Schitt's Creek, baby.
Baby.
We've just decided that it's not going to be a serious topic today, I guess, huh?
Ironically enough, it's probably the most serious.
It is a very serious topic. So Anne, why don't you get us started with talking about what we are going to talk about today?
Yes, so we need to address the elephant in the room that is the negative view of ABA. There is a pretty bad history of ABA when it started. I mean, kind of like most things, you know, when you start something, it's pretty crappy. And you have to work through the kinks.
And ABA is still very new, like very new. I think what, like 50 years old? Is that? No, I feel like I'm always wrong with that. I have to Google that because
Yeah, if you're going to ask me dates, I'm not the one. I know birthdays.
ABA began. Let's see. 1960.
Don't ask me to calculate this. What year?
1960. So I was close.
So that's 50. Hold on. It's like 60?
60 plus. Okay, so we're in 2020. We're about to be in 2024. I really hope that people are watching this right now.
That's not right.
Okay, so 4, 5, 6. So 63 years old, right?
Okay, I was off 10 years. Listen, I'm good at math.
It says in the mid 1960s is when things started with ABA. That's when Lovaas began teaching and designing ABA. So if you don't know about Lovaas, check him out. He's one of our founders. Anyways, so as Anne was saying, you know, we are still very new to ABA.
I'm sorry. I thought your name was Erika.
Oh.
It's okay. It's all right.
Clearly, when we want to talk about serious things, we start getting extra giggly, and like we apologize for that. But we also know the importance of the negative parts of ABI. So, anyways, Anne, as you were saying,
yes. And while we're laughing, we do understand that this is a very serious topic because we're dealing with real people. You know, this has affected people negatively, and maybe still. So, you know, that's something to really keep in mind. So like when parents are like, oh, why can't we do this? Why can't we do that? It's because we don't want to be responsible for ruining your kid, in a nutshell.
Yeah. And it's funny, like I guess it's not funny. That's a terrible phrase to use, but it's ironic that I will start out my sessions or my parent interviews by saying, like, if you Googled ABA, don't believe anything that you saw on the internet. It's all, just don't read on it, right? Like, don't read upon the negative stuff because you're going to see a lot of things that happened to people, unfortunately, many years ago, before we really started putting in those positive practices first. And our ethics code has really been defined since. So like, for example, you know, you might see that timeout and, you know, those negative punishment procedures have been used in ABI previously, and it's, you know, restraining kids or, you know, anything along those lines. And we don't do that anymore. At least, you know, the good companies that you may find out there with good good BCBAs, programming for you, but you won't see any of those negative things being utilized unless it's run by an ethics committee and you have exhausted all of your other efforts with positive procedures. So Anne and I both came from a company that did only positive procedures. Like we did not learn any of those negative ones. Maybe it was like talked about every once in a while of like, we shouldn't do that. But like, if it comes down to it, maybe we should explore that option. And, I don't think that in my, whatever amount of years since 2016, once again, math's not our strong suit. We use calculators. So since
And graphs,
2016, and graphs, it's all good. It's all automated generated. But we, really focus heavily on our positive procedures over our negative ones.
So I have used res response cost when I was a BT. It was even before there was such thing as an RBT, a registered behavior technician. That was under the supervision of the BCBA, and that response cost is you use the token system, and if the client is engaging in a set behavior that's defined, then you remove the tokens. So you can give tokens and remove them. And it doesn't sound too bad, but it is a punishment. You're taking away something to decrease a behavior. That decreasing behavior is in the definition of punishment. So yeah, like Erika said, we came from a company who really didn't use it. If you did, like I did, you had to exhaust, okay, the reinforcement that we put in place is not working anymore. We need something stronger. And punishment should only be temporary. As soon as, it's only a temporary fix anyway. It's not going to modify the behavior in the long run. It's a quick fix. And then you end it, and then you go back to the reinforcement. And you always use it with reinforcement if you're instructed to use it. But yeah, I mean, our ethics code is so strict because of that, because I don't know if as a society we're just wired to use punishment first, or if it's like a generational how we've been brought up over the years. That's just like what we know and what we think works, and it looks like it works, but it really doesn't, and it's not healthy, and it doesn't create a healthy environment for the learners.
It oftentimes causes fear, if anything. Like you're causing a child to have fear towards engaging in the proper behavior if we start implementing punishment. I think about, just in general, the parents that have talked to me about how they, provide consequences. I had a parent ask me, how do I give consequences to my child who does not understand what consequences mean? I can't raise my voice at them. I can't, anything along those lines. And I said, well, let's try and like talk to them in the manner of like positive ways instead of like, how can we approach this? What can we do instead? Replacement behaviors. And like, just like what we talked about in our previous episodes, exhausting all of those first before we start with the consequence stuff, or like the negative procedures, but utilizing all of our options as much as possible.
I think it's also important to say, and we've said this before, where when we're using our reinforcement procedures, you're not going to see an immediate change. And I think that can be frustrating as a parent. You want this behavior gone, and you just want them to listen. And you don't want to wait for that. But really, it's teaching. Just if you kind of adjust your way of thinking to, oh, I have to teach this, then, you kind of have to unparent if that's not a familiar way for you to teach.
Yeah. And yeah. And I mean, it also goes to the fact that we do see extinction bursts, and we do see, spontaneous recovery. And both of those mean, like, if we're providing, we have an extinction procedure in place, meaning that we're removing all reinforcement from that behavior. So say your child is screaming over wanting a lollipop, we're not going to give them that lollipop. We are going to withhold the lollipop and provide it at certain aspects of their day. So if they're engaging in something positive, then they can have the lollipop, but they're not going to be able to have that lollipop if they're engaging in a tantrum, right? So if we're removing that reinforcement, we're going to see an increase in times that they are asking for it and they're not allowed for it, right? We're going to see that spike, and then we're going to see a decrease over time. And I definitely heavily talk to my parents about this, saying like, you're going to see an increase in a behavior before it decreases. Always
Yes,
remember
I
that.
say that
Stick
too.
to what we're doing. Stay with the positive procedures. Try your best to stay calm, cool, collected. Walk away if you have to. I understand they're having a tantrum. You can absolutely walk away as long as they're safe. Like,
That's exactly what I say. And they like their response is usually, but I do that. I do that. I do that and it's not working. Okay. Like it's not up to us. We don't know when it's gonna end. We can't tell you when the behavior is gonna decrease. That is up to the client. So, and that's really hard for me, who's type A, and I need to control everyone. And I feel like a lot of people in
I'm
this field are type A. Yeah,
definitely.
I think that's a thing in our field is, and I think that's why we're so good at what we do is because we know how to manipulate the environment to get the outcomes that we want. And as a parent, they're like, I'm doing this, I'm doing all of these things, but it's not working. Also, it's going to be harder to do these strategies as a parent because they have a rapport with you already. It's different than someone new coming in, having all of these fun toys, and we're only there for 4 hours a day. When you're there, it's constant. So you're constantly on. And that's really hard to do.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think that like just keeping in mind that we have to, as the 76ers would say, Philadelphia basketball fans out there, trust the process. Sorry, I had to throw it in there. We're all from Philly. Well, I shouldn't say
I'm a
all.
Lakers fan now, okay?
Well, my husband is still a 76ers fan and he will bleed red and blue for the rest of his life, even though we're in South Carolina now. But no, our parents need to like trust us. They do trust us, right? And that's why they have us in place. But trusting the process, understanding that like we do know what we're doing and we're trying our hardest. And I feel like a lot of my parents trust me and trust my process anyways, and understand that like if I'm having a really large behavior right now, I'm gonna keep track of this and I'm going to talk to Erika about it. And then we're gonna work through this in the best way possible. Like I might not be handling it the most appropriate way right now, but I will learn how to. And then I think that also ropes back into like the negative procedures, like the parents that are not sure how to approach the behavior in a positive way, right? And like trying to like avoid those timeouts and making it more appropriate, right? So like I had a parent the other day say their oh gosh, what did they call it? Their calm down corner, and like creating a calm down corner versus a timeout corner. So it's not a punishment. It is a calm down space where they can relax. They can take a breather. It's safe. It's squishy. It's sensory, right? They're not getting reinforced for the behavior that they're engaging in. They're getting that calm down time that they need. So
And so then how does that look as opposed to the timeout? Are they getting sent there? Like, is it just they can go there whenever they're starting to feel not happy?
what I've seen is parents will suggest it and they will provide that opportunity. Oh, it looks like you're really upset right now. Why don't we go and try and take a break in the timeout or the calm down corner? And not setting a timer, not setting anything like that, checking in on them periodically, seeing how they're doing. And I've seen a lot of parents actually ask me about calm down corners before. I didn't see that up north. I don't know if it's like something that happens down south more. I don't know if you've heard of it before.
I've seen it. I haven't seen it in homes here. I'm trying to think. I've seen it in schools though, well, in preschools, like with the younger kiddos. That's not really a an option for older kids, but I
Yeah.
do think that it should be.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've definitely seen it in schools. I haven't really seen it be utilized. Like the kids would go in there and play instead of just calming down, and they were only allowed one kid at a time, and they would have like sensory things. There was at the treatment center where I just left, they had a whole room that was like a dark, calm room with like bean bags and like a fish calming lamp. Um, I mean, it looked nice to me.
But it's like also to help teach those coping strategies. Like that's the space where you can use to calm down, collect yourself. It's them walking away from the behavior too, right? It's them learning that in this space, I can be as upset as I want. I'm going to learn how to cope with it a little bit better. Like especially my kiddos that throw themselves to the floor. It's important for them to have like a squishy area that they can do that instead, right? Like I don't do that all you want in the squish corner. Like go
Yeah,
ahead. Like, ooh,
yeah.
sorry. Tap the mic. Do that all you want in like the squishy, calm, appropriate space. Don't do that on the hard floor, please. Like that is where I really focus on like utilizing that space. And that's where the difference is, right? Like I'm not going to allow you to have a tantrum on a surface that's
On a
going to
hard
injure
floor.
you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Huh.
and that's like, parents want to jump in and stop the crying. I get it. I get it. But yeah, you like you said, if they're safe and they're not, destroying the property or hurting themselves or putting anyone else in danger, like crime's okay. And I think that's something that as a society in general, we need to be more accepting of it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think that also then like goes to like our reinforcement, right? Like how are we reinforcing our kids for the appropriate behaviors? Because I think that it's oftentimes looked at we're bribing, right? And that's a negative
Mm-hmm.
connotation of our ABI practices. Like I I always joke to parents whenever they say like, "Oh yeah, I'm bribing my child." I'm like, "No, no, no, no. You're reinforcing them. You're using reinforcement procedures." And they're like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah. Reinforcing, uh-huh. I mean, bribe. No, 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 no. Like you're reinforcing their behaviors. You're not bribing them. You're using that first then procedure. Like first we can do this, then you can have your fun thing." It's all about reinforcement. It's not a bribe. Not a bribe.
Something that I was taught about the difference between bribing and the pre-MAC principle, the first then, is that it's only bribing if you use it as a consequence. So that's why it's important that we say you need to use the pre-MAC principle before you see any of these behaviors, any of the negative behaviors, because then the bribe, the reinforcer is contingent upon, oh, well, I just scream my head off, and then because mom's gonna offer a piece of candy if I stop. So if you're waiting for the behavior to happen and then you're like, oh, stop and I'll give you a cookie, like, okay, like that's a bribe.
Yeah.
Or like be quiet in the grocery store and I'll get you a lollipop. Or yeah.
Or I'll get you like a new toy or something. Like if you behave
Right. Yeah.
here, I'm gonna give you a new toy. Like, no, like we don't use it in that manner. Like we use it as like if you are able to engage in X, Y, or Z behavior appropriately, right, then we can have, you know, the reinforcer. And we're also not like dangling the reinforcer in front of kids. Like I
Right.
oftentimes find myself reminding our kids, especially with like our token economies, right? Like I think we were about to like touch base on that one too, about like pre-MAC principle and token economies kind of go
Mhm.
hand in hand. Um, with our procedures, because a lot of times we need that visual aid as well. Um, and I find myself reminding my clients, like, do you want this toy? Oh, yeah. Okay, great. Like, you can have it, but we first have to do X, Y, or Z first, and then we can have this, or, you know, something along those lines. And I'm not just like, ha ha ha, look what I got. Like, you got to do it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's definitely not in a bribing manner. Like,
Well, and you're doing a preference, you have to do a preference assessment with that too, because what I might think would be reinforcing maybe isn't reinforcing to the point. So making sure that they actually want it and then using that to motivate them to follow through with whatever you're trying to get out of them. But yeah, and making sure you're saying it at the start of whatever you're going to start to do. Like, okay, we have to go to the store, we have to get these things. What do you want to work for? Like right at the start before there's even a chance to have a behavior. And then it can be a discussion rather than, okay, stop, 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 stop. We're like, what do you want? I'll give you this, I'll give you this, I'll give you this, just stop.
mm-hmm. Yep. And like you were saying too, like I'll even remind them after they've chosen their activity,
Yeah.
right? And you can do that absolutely. You can remind the kid as much as possible because they might forget. I forget
Yeah.
sometimes, but I'm an adult. Like, I'll forget what kids are working for half the time and be like, oh, right. Yeah, no, you were working for that. You're right. What were you working for again? You got to remind me. um, but like that also one like falls into like we're helping our kids learn in those manners. We're not forcing the behavior to occur. We're working towards encouraging the behaviors to occur. And I think a lot
Right.
of times too, like the negative aspects fall under like forcing kids, right? Like this is a forceful
Right.
thing. Like, no, we're going to utilize this to help our kids learn, and to encourage them so that they're growing like their similar age peers. If we're not helping them engage in these activities that like may look like they really effing hate it, like we're not going to help them with growing as part of their similar age peers, which is part of our behavior plan is, you know, and ethics. Like we want them to
Successful.
exactly like that's the whole point of it all, like health and safety plus like being as close to their similar age peers as possible. That's what we are striving for.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, and we want to look at the bigger picture of how can we help make their lives more fulfilling, because we oftentimes serve young kids in the hopes that they won't need us in the future, right? So of course there's going to be some older clients you may have. I've worked with some adults, um, but the end goal is for them to not need us and not be dependent on us and to you know make their own choices. You're kind of going into like consent, and that's something that I don't know, I don't think that was very clear in the beginning of ABA, and I could be wrong. But consent is a huge thing. Not only is it, we need the consent written from parents if we're working with minors, but we have to think about assent too. So, we have the consent or we don't. If the kid's saying no, they don't want to do something, um, even if we're trying to teach a non-preferred activity, okay. So then teaching them how to get out of that activity appropriately and also teaching them flexibility to engage in something, even if they don't really want to, because in the real world, we all are going to come in contact with things we don't want to do, like going to school or going to gym class. I hated gym class. I had to do it.
Yeah. And if you think about it, we all, like, as neurotypical developing people, have to also engage in things that we do not like to do. There's so many things out there that we have to do because it's part of living,
Part of
right?
life. Yep.
It's part of life. And if we don't do it, then, we won't get money or we won't live like healthily. Like, there are reasons to why we also have to help our kiddos that we work with engage in similar things, especially when they're non-preferred. So teaching that flexibility, but also remembering to teach them, like, you can be all done, you can take breaks, like, and honoring those things.
I've had, sorry, I
You're
just
fine.
thought of a scenario where I'm working with someone who you could clearly tell the activity was non-preferred, but they wanted to finish the activity because of their own rigidity. They wanted to get it done, but they were crying through it. So we were like kind of doing the opposite of, okay, you're gonna take a break. Please take a break because you're getting us that, like, we see that you're crying and this is making you upset. Take a break. We can come back to and finish it. And that's okay too. I mean, I think, yeah, we totally focus on teaching the non-preferred, but then what do you do when they want to engage in the non-preferred so much that it's stressing them out?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and looking for those warning signs and trying to help them understand, like, it's okay to take breaks. Like, I feel like everyone needs to take breaks. Not feel, I know everyone needs to take breaks. Everyone in this world, that's all of our listeners need to take breaks too. Like, I think that's also super important. And, like, looking out for those warning signs and not forcing kids through things that are aversive. But also, one little thing that I feel is super important. If we are seeing signs that kids are all done with an activity or need a break from an activity, not only are you providing that language for them, but also, instead of, like, reinforcing a high behavior, so say a kiddo is starting to get upset, have them do something super easy of a task that they already have in their repertoire. Because if you have them if you say, like, all right, touch your nose, great, all right, bye, you can go ahead, go play. They
Breaking up
totally
that so that
forgot.
it's not, yeah, yeah.
They
Oh,
want.
that is a good distractor.
They forgot that, like, they were trying to have a behavior over, not wanting to play a game, or not want to, do cards, or, any of the learning activities that we have in place. And I really heavily focus on that with my RBTs and my BTs. Like, yes, I understand they want to go and they want to be all done, and that's completely fine. But if we reinforce them escaping from the task at hand without putting in one small, easy repertoire task that you're able to even fully prompt them through, like, then you're going to see that behavior arise more often whenever you present that activity again. And I hope that doesn't view as, like, any sort of, like negative procedure, because that's more of, like, no, we're reinforcing the appropriate behaviors versus the negative behaviors. Because, like I said, if you allow the child to have a tantrum and then you're like, okay, goodbye, without them telling you or engaging in something small, then you're just be creating a behavior chain that you don't need, that you don't want,
Yeah.
that they don't need, they don't want.
Right. Yeah. And I think, yeah, I think what you're trying to say is, having them do that small task to kind of that, I think that can help de-escalate a little bit too, even if it's like completely unrelated to what you're doing or what they want to escape from. Because we want to teach functional communication. Um, it's I think we start to learn and predict our clients and their behaviors, and their parents do, especially if there are like communication challenges where, like, an outsider might not understand what they're saying, but you do. So helping them with that functional communication so that anyone can understand them will help de-escalate that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's like something uh, for parents to understand too. It's like you may understand what they're saying, but an outsider is not going to be able to understand and not going to be able to help them. So that's what we need to help teach.
Yeah. And a lot of times that functional communication training is what looks negative to people.
Yeah.
Like when we're trying to even teach the child to sign or to, say something, or even just, use a device of some sort, we see increases in behaviors because kids don't want to, like, they're like, no, I'll just walk away instead of requesting for something or trying to get it themselves. And that's when we really focus on that, like, you can gesture for it, you can sign for it, you can use like some way to request for things or utilize that communication or increase that communication, I should say. I guess the one last thing that I want to really, I think it's we had talked about it before, and about how like it may look like I'm being mean and I'm really not. I just want to focus on that real quick before we wrap up. But I find myself having to explain to parents or like, other providers sometimes that my stern like talking to a child is not me being mean. It's me trying to match what they need. So a lot of times I will, especially when a child is upset, I will match their tone that they need, right? Like I had a client the other day, really focused on not being flexible. She does not want to be flexible whatsoever. It has to be first. It's a whole thing. And I was like, listen, I understand you're upset. You're allowed to be upset, but your sister's going to go first. It's just the way it is. Sorry. And she was able to understand and grasp it more than me trying to like be like, no, that's not available. Like you have to match their tone. You have to also remember who you're talking to a lot of times. And so,
And their age too.
and their age. And this kiddo could understand like the stern, but like meaningful discussion that we were having, right? And never would I ever raise my voice at a child, especially us ABA providers, where we would never do that because that is punishment, right? Like 100%. But so you'll see us like talking slower or more stern because that's how our kids respond. And to some people, it might look like we're being really mean, and we're not. It's effective. I don't know, Anne, if you've seen the same thing or you've done the same thing, but I do that with 90% of my kids.
Right. And just kind of with that, when we are implementing extinction procedures and to an outsider, it could look like we're ignoring the kid and not being helpful. But what we're really just doing is removing the reinforcement. If they were being reinforced by the attention, even if it's negative attention of stop doing that, or you can't do that, stop screaming, all of those things, and you're just no longer like, you just stop and you go about your day, and you occupy yourself while they're next to you. It doesn't mean that you're ignoring them. You're ignoring the behavior. You can still talk to them, but to an outsider, it could look like, why aren't you doing anything? Why aren't you stopping them? What, like, do something. Handle your kid, especially in public. I know that can be really hard for parents, to go out in public. What if my kid has a tantrum? People are going to look at me and judge me as a parent if I'm going to just let them go. Who cares? You have to really, like, in that moment, your child is the only thing that matters. And if getting them through that tantrum means that you're going to forget everyone else's reactions and you're going to focus on what the function of that behavior is, of that tantrum, and putting whatever on extinction, that's going to be more beneficial to your child than feeding into what other people want you to do.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. And, I think that's really important to remember too, is like, especially when we're providing the extinction procedures in the outside world. Like we're gonna look a little odd because we're not giving that reinforcement. And people might be like, just give them what they're looking for. No, that's not how this works. It just doesn't. We're gonna see this behavior increase every single time then if you give in every single time. Um, with that being said, once again, trust the process like the 76ers. Um, is there
What is
anything?
sports?
It's very heavily watched in my house.
I watch Twitch.
I don't know what that means.
Video game streaming.
Oh, yeah, no, I don't. That's not something that we watch.
It's sports for us.
It's a different kind of sport.
It's competitive video games.
That's pretty cool. Anyways, thank you guys so much for listening. We will definitely be talking more about these negative aspects of ABA and how we're trying to make a positive spin on it. And, that's once again our purpose of this podcast, is to make sure that people are understanding that these negative procedures are not used anymore, or at least they shouldn't be used. And if they are, it's unethical. Or it's been approved by the ethics board at the company or the school district or whatever the situation may be. It has to be approved by them first. Thank you guys so much for listening again. This is ABA Generalized, the podcast. We have our Instagram page should be live by now. By the time you're listening to this, check us out at, hold on, I'm pulling up because I don't know. I think I just made it today. So, and you'll see my face on there first because just because I did it first. No one else decided they wanted to go first. So I was like, you know what, I'll just do it. Anyway, so we are no spaces, ABA Generalized, the pod. Check us out on Instagram. We're also on TikTok. I think it's also the same name. Anne has that. Hold, please.
Skip. Okay, TikTok. I've been on here before. It's our stop giving me these pop-ups. Our TikTok is ABA Generalized.
Cool.
That's it.
And then our email is ABA generalized. Hold on. I'm definitely messing this up. Okay. No, I was right. Okay. So it's ABA generalized podcast at gmail.com. So please feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. Give us a follow, give us send us a message, send us an email. Let us know what you want to hear in the future, because we want to hear from you. And we are so excited to be here. All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.
ABA Generalized, the podcast, is not providing professional advice. Please seek a professional in your area for specific advice and support.